Hello, Earthlings and fellow Americans. So last time we met, I was talking about EJ's insurance agency and some of the crazy stuff that happened there and why I left. It could have had something to do with him if I was a more sensitive type. A lot of people accuse me of that, but honestly, I'm just furious with their illogic and their rudeness. I just don't think it's ever excusable to be like that. But not really that sensitive. So I decided to just go with my actual background and not try and cover up my pink plastic drawers or anything. Or my vision boards. No, that's not real money on the wall. It's a picture of money. You know, incentive, inspiration for my goals. Anyway, so I forgot to mention the whole Russell thing. You know, the guy that's trying to get me chased out of here because he thinks he left a fortune in the driveway. Insanity. Anyway. Yeah, maybe a couple $100. Maybe if you dug and dug and dug. But no, they are not hexagonal. They're not high quality. They're distorted, ripply colors, and I mean, it's like instead of a bag of Cheetos, you buy the off-brand, and the cheese powder doesn't quite taste right. Doesn't really taste like cheese, and there's way too much salt. That kind of a deal. That's what's in the driveway. And it's mostly just flat colors, and it might as well just be regular gravel, you know? Kind of like the pastel rocks up in Glacier, Montana. You know, the Glacier area, Glacier National Park. Those pretty colored rocks, they're just pretty colors. It's kind of like that, but small, chunky stuff. Anyway, so he also came in there, and that's when he told me, that's when I found out about it. When I first arrived in this town, 8165. Yeah. That's when I learned all his crazy adventures in being a slumlord. He said slumlord. He bragged about being a slumlord. And, oh, I forgot. He actually owned one of the car washes here in town before he got in trouble with the law. And several of the homes in this neighborhood and blah, 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 blah. And something I also remembered last night while I was laughing at this, I guess it jogged my memory. He actually brought people free gravel because there was way too much in one of those big industrial dumpers that he had brought home with him to put in this driveway. So he actually, the neighbors across the street, the neighbors next door, you know, he was just giving people free gravel. And then he, you know, not townhomes, they're not townhomes. Anyway, the homes that he owned in this place got it, and a few of their neighbors. So, like, any place that ever received gravel from Mr. Russell, I'm not going to say his whole name, you probably might have one or two crystals, maybe a handful, you know, like, I'm not thinking they're going to be worth more than $20 or $50, even after working them on a lathe or whatever. So I usually go for collecting the raw stuff, you know, geodes and platters of crystal and cool, funky looking rock samples. I'm telling you, I'm a nerd when it comes to rocks. So your sugar cookie jewelry is just sugar cookie jewelry. It might be worth a lot in retail value, but to me it's just a sparkly thing that it's pretty, but I want the big samples, that I can set in a display case and label it and all that stuff. Anyway, so he told me about that and the plumbing issues with this place, like the actual house, that he had been creative in his plumbing and his remodeling. This is before he sold it, and it was actually done properly to look nice. But a lot of stuff was missed because they didn't know that was hiding under the floor and in the wall, right? So as we fixed things, we found it was 2 or 3 projects, actually, because Russell likes to do his own thing. And I'm wondering what he's doing to that big 5-bedroom house down at the end of the street, right? Very curious. But yeah, so he told me all about that stuff, and then how he ran extra plumbing and extra gas line and extra electric supply under the ground back to his shed that jumped the fence because he made a big mistake. Anyway, I don't know what the mistake was specifically. I just know that the paper told the story and I read it and I thought it was hilarious. And I don't know, like, that's my only opinion. It's just a funny story, and he sold the place, and I forgot all those addresses because I wasn't working in that office for quite a few years, until I moved back here in 2017 after being away for a year. So we're talking far enough back that I need specific details to remind me. And I didn't realize that was the house I bought. A crazy house that he did creative plumbing and remodeling and things too. But now I know. Anyway, so yeah, there was other crazy things that happened at EJ's office that I don't think he's even aware of, and things I told him that I felt like, he's the owner, he needs to know. He kind of didn't care. It was there to help him get ready to retire, like he had his career there, and then it was just, he was wrapping things up. I didn't realize this until I got close to leaving, and I was like, oh, okay. Maybe I'll buy it from him, maybe I won't. And then I didn't. Because I was warned by one of my spirit guides that there was something weird going on. Not from EJ, from somebody else that was calling frequently. And I don't think they were even his client. I'm not even sure if he realized what they were. I just know that he would say things and I would be like, this sounds like stuff I've had happen to me before while I'm working someplace. Several places, and then drama ensues. But he doesn't put up with nonsense, which is what these people that call are. They're just nonsense people trying to cause me problems. And so it wasn't going to come from him because he doesn't, like I said, he's not a nonsense guy. He does not put up with silly stuff, and I mean, he has his own silly stuff. But scammy type people, oh no, don't mess with EJ. He'll just laugh at you and walk away. Thank God. But as a result, these people were getting frustrated. And yeah, I was warned not to go back there. Didn't get big specifics, but I got warned that it wasn't going to be safe for me there. Anyway, so after him, I worked a couple of different places and ran my computer repair business out of a new location. I like to call it the Blue Bonnet Cottage because it was this buttercream yellow with sky blue trim. And the house next door, which was owned by the same landlady, was the same color scheme, but bigger. and didn't really need a bigger place at the time, so we were happy with what we had, trying to maintain, right? And it was much better than the first place we had lived, because that place was so much more cramped once we got our stuff in there, because it had been a motel room. Well, 2 motel rooms, because it was a 2-bedroom, right? So they had combined 2 of them. Anyway, so yeah, that place has had so many owners. It's gone through a lot of fingers, because they have a hard time keeping people in there, probably because it's haunted. Like, it's noticeably haunted. I mean, for somebody like me, it's not a big deal. It's just routine. It's just something I have to put up with, because I notice stuff even other people don't notice. But for your regular everyday person, then it's going to creep them out and they're going to move. Plus, there's like plumbing issues, and I don't know if they've ever replaced the carpet. You know, that thin industrial carpet that budget motels put on the floor? That's basically what's in there, or was. I don't know. It's been through different owners, so I don't know. But it's got that old 1920s or 30s or 40s kind of wood trim, and so it's kind of quaint, and it's brick. And your initial impression is a good impression, and you kind of don't care that it used to be a motel, because it was an older motel. Then there's those issues. So anyway, moving on. I'm in this new place, and I'm out, like, we had this long front yard and no backyard, because it was situated next to the alley. And then I suddenly realized it's right next door to the other property. It was probably bought together, and it's similar in trim. It's matchy, right? It's not just the color and the trim, it's matchy, like they were meant to be together, right? And the bigger house is up front and the smaller house is out back. And I just started looking at that and going, I bet that used to be the garage. And it was. I'm like sitting there after I've mowed the lawn up by the front of the picket fence, and I'm looking and I see this little crack, this hairline crack in the shape and size of a garage door. And I'm like, oh. So they just took that out, filled in the wall, and then stuck it over it, but it's going to keep showing every time it gets old, because, you know, the edges of those kinds of things, no matter how well they do it, the older the building gets, such remodels do kind of show. You have to keep redoing the stucco and the paint. Yeah? So it was so cute, though. Wood floors everywhere, and they were well cared for, and French doors all over the place. You know, the glass with the little hatchwork panes. Maple wood color. I don't know if it was actually maple wood, but it looked like it was. It just was cute. I think it had been the mother-in-law house for whoever originally owned the full property, and then the landlord we had split it and put a fence down the middle. The old privacy fence. And then we also rented the replacement garage that was sitting behind the other house, because we used it for storage, and I was going to get a car again before I moved from there after 1 year's lease and a few months, because it was like a month to month if I stayed past the original lease. Normal procedure, of course, but it just didn't happen. I had so many challenges here in this town that I was like, I thought I left that behind in California. Like, I'm in the Midwest, I'm in the Rocky Mountains. Things are supposed to be more normal. But this is a sort of a different sort of a town. There's all kinds of things that aren't obvious, that unless you've been a government employee, you wouldn't notice, or a government dependent. And I started noticing, and I'm like, no, it can't be. But I think I'm right. It's just so evident. Or if not, then it used to be, right? And so it's just leftovers because it's just kind of staying that way. Yeah. So originally it was a regular town. But anyway, so I'm sitting here as I adjust myself. My face goes, woo! I find that so funny. Anyway, so I'm done working for AJ, and I worked at like the veterans place, and I worked at, oh god, that was funny. So I'm there for 5 days, right? And on my 5th day, I'm like doing waitressing and a little bit of food prep, and it's the not Veterans Administration, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, the VFW clubhouse thing. And they have a restaurant down in the basement. So I'm working there. And they also have a bar. So sometimes I'm a bartender, sometimes I'm a waitress. I was like, okay, cool. I've done pretty good doing bartending for, my friends when I have get-togethers back when people used to socialize. And I was right. It wasn't that much different. It was just a little more formal. So I'm doing my thing, and there's this guy that comes in on my 5th day. I mean, my first work week there. This weird guy comes in, and I've dealt with him before in like Utah and California. This is one of the people that just keeps popping up in my life that I don't understand why. Like, why does he think he needs to follow me around? And I think it has to do with when they had me, unconscious, sleepwalking, doing things they wanted me to do. Men get fixated. They don't want to admit it, but they do. Some of them get fixated, and sometimes it depends on whatever's going on in their life or their mental state. So this guy is not unattractive. He's just a little nuts. Like kind of like hide your children and hide your wife and kids, right? Kind of a thing. Like, he's not easy to talk to even. And he uses a lot of dictionary words, right? While he's trying to be sexy. Yeah, he's trying to be sexy with me. And I'm like, I get him a drink. I can't remember what he asked for, but it's something that's pretty standard, but I've never fixed it before. I'm not sure what the recipe is. So I ask him, and it's like 3 ingredients or something. And I'm like, oh yeah, I can do that. So I do it really quick, and I follow his little specifications, customize it to him, and then I give it to him, and then he wants another one, and then he says, so can we have intercourse? And I'm like, he used the word intercourse. And I'm like, no, what? Like, in front of God and everybody, my coworkers, there's other customers in the place, and the lady that is like the assistant manager, but she has another full-time job elsewhere, and the manager that's never there because he runs a couple of businesses. So how is he the manager? They need somebody there that can be there. And somebody that's reasonable, because let me tell you what happened. I was very uncomfortable, and I got to the end of my shift, and it was only a 4-hour day. So it wasn't like I even had a full-time job there. It was minimum wage plus tips, right? And they paid you out of the cash register. Like, I didn't even have a paycheck. And I don't know why that could be, but I have my ideas. So anyway, I tell the assistant manager, I'm like, that made me really uncomfortable. And she's sitting there with this funny look on her face at a little table on the side where we set things down before we put them away, kind of a thing. Or you set them up to take them to their table, like a little staging table. And she's just sitting there at this little chair beside this table where nobody usually sits, and looking very nervous. And I'm confused, like as if I've scared her somehow. But I'm the one that was being verbally assaulted by this guy, right? Repeatedly, he would not stop. He just kept going and going and going with it. And I kept telling him no. Like, how do you talk to somebody that's working at a place that you just barely met like that? What is this? And I'm recognizing his face, and I'm like, I know this guy. This is the guy that tried to get me to do a childcare business with him as, like, the boss. And he was, like, not paying my rent, and I was operating this childcare thing out of my home, my apartment, you know. And he wasn't paying any expenses, but he's trying to tell me what I get to charge people and what kind of people I can have there, right? What is that? And we knew each other from, I guess, the talent agency that I was at, right? I'll tell you more about that later. Anyway, so here's this guy in front of me, and I'm like, I can't remember his name, but I know his face, and he has never spoken to me this way before. And I'm really offended, and I don't understand why he thinks after a couple of years apart like that he can just show up all of a sudden and talk to me this way. And, like, we've never kissed, we've never had sex, like, there's no, you know, oh, oops, we've never had adult fun time. So, like, there's no frame of reference for this, there's no foundation. He just launches into this. Can we have intercourse? Oh, please, can we? I really like you. Oh. Just, I think he was trying to be offensive on purpose, though. That's the other thing. Maybe he was mad at me because I finally told him to bug off the last time. Anyway, so I'm just like, why is she freaked out? And she says, well, go home, don't come in tomorrow, okay? We're going to have to think about it. It took them 3 days to tell me that we're going to part company. And I should come get my pay. And I didn't really get any tips there. They didn't have a lot of customers, and most of the people that come in there are kind of broke, you know. Retirees that are on their Social Security income, and it's not that great of an income usually, or it's stingy, you know, and then some of their families. Because it wasn't all VFW people that came in. It was some people from town, but not very many. And the salad bar had some funny issues. And their supplies in the larder and the walk-in cooler were not very plentiful. Anyway, but their decision was that I shouldn't come in, and they said it was because I was attracting riffraff. He actually used the word riffraff. I was like, how am I attracting riffraff? That's my 5th day. There's no way that you can decide that I'm attracting riffraff by having 4 really good days where you liked me, and then the 5th day somebody comes in that I barely know, and he didn't indicate that he knew me, and I didn't tell them that I had run across him before. It had been several years since my kids were tiny, and now they were all teenagers and one was an adult, right? So, no, actually 2 of them were adults. But years, like a decade plus. And here he is acting like this, and I couldn't even remember his name. So I don't even think he remembered my name. We didn't have to wear name tags. That's the other thing. There was no uniform, no name tags. We just came dressed a certain way and, you know, family oriented, right, type outfits. And that happened. So I was back to square one. Like, I'm trying to get my computer repair business going because that's what I want to do. And I can't get a storefront because I can't get a bank loan. I can't get a woman-owned business loan because Obama canceled it. And I'm trying to figure out how to round up the cash because I went into this in the recession, right? I was already struggling just doing normal stuff. And now I'm trying to start a business Like, there's no way to do it. So I'm operating from my home, and it doesn't pay all the bills, so I have to get a second job, right? Like, that's just how it is when you start that way. Skeleton budget and all that stuff. So anyway, I worked at Safeway that is now closed permanently, and a couple other things I can't remember. Just little jobs. And then ran my business. Well, we had been there a year and 4 months, 5 months, something like that. And I started noticing that our gas bill was like doubling. So I went and I called the gas company and I said, my first year here, the gas bill was at, I can't remember, $50. I'm just going to say $50, right? And now it's like $100. And it's been doing that for the past couple months. And it just dawned on me that's happening, and I don't understand it because this little house used to be a garage, and it doesn't make any sense. We haven't added any appliances that use gas. It's still the same setup. It's still the same square footage. Why would it just double all of a sudden in the past couple months? And the lady says, okay, what's your name and address? And she looks it up. She's like, oh. I said, what? She's like, I need to send a technician out right away. And I was like, okay. She's like, do you smell gas? I was like, sometimes when I'm out back. Sometimes. So she's like, just don't do anything. Don't turn on your stove. Just, are you going to be there? I was like, yeah. Because it was one of those days when I was going to be home all day. So the guy comes, the gas man comes, and he checks the, I guess, what do they call that thing out back that's got the meter? The meter. He checks the meter. He does the sensor thing. Nothing happens. He goes down in the basement. Yes, it had a basement. That's how they made it bigger, right? So there was a second room for people to sleep in. Anyway, and a little laundry area and really scrawny storage area next to the furnace and the water heater. So he runs it over the furnace and it's like, makes that funny noise that it does when there's a gas leak. He's like, oh, it's like, I did this address last year or a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, something like that. I can't remember what he said, but he was the one that came and shut it off and put the red tape on it. And when I had done the walkthrough with the landlady, she had pulled the red tape off and cranked the little arm back on, right, to let the gas supply in. I said, we already fixed this. It's fine. I forgot to take this off. And I was like, okay, because that happens. But no, it doesn't. I mean, other things similar to that happen when you're doing repairs in a rental, because I've been a rental manager. But usually things to do with gas and electric, it's the gas company or the electric company that come and look at it, or the contractor, and they're the ones that take the tape off. So because the tape wasn't off, that means she didn't fix anything. Because she didn't want to lose money. She didn't want to spend money. She just wanted to make money. Which, she's a very likable person, but really you're going to risk the lives of your tenants. It was that dangerous because the guy showed me that the burner on one side was blowing backwards, which could lead to an explosion. Right? And when it had sat and rested for a while, it was blowing the right way until it just that model, he said, had a habit of building up residue just from the gas going through. There's something about the way they constructed the burners and stuff. And then on top of it, right, so we turn off the gas. It's still kind of cold because it's April, and I told you snow's still here in April. And even the years where there's not snow, it's very cold, especially in the evening. Stuff can still freeze outside. If you leave like a puddle of water, it'll freeze. You come up in the morning and it'll be frozen until the sun gets up high. right? So I was like, God. I was like, tried to call the landlady. She wasn't answering. And I didn't want to just leave a message. I was like, this is dangerous. This needs to be taken care of. And so we go to bed and make sure we're extra warm, extra blankets and stuff. And then my grandson had been staying with me. He was 2. And he had this habit of going and playing with the power strip that we had in the living room because there weren't a lot of plugs in this old place. And we had to have a power strip for the TV and the DVD player and the game system, right? Well, I wake up all of a sudden when the sun is not quite up yet. It's like dawn, early dawn. And I hear, to set the date and time, click, click. To set the date and time, like, oh yeah, my answering machine. With, those phone answering machine combo units. I still had that, and so I used it. To set the date and time, click, click. And I'm like, Isaac, are you playing with the power strip again? Because he had done this before. Shiny red lit up button, and he's like, those little toggle buttons. He had learned not to do that, I thought, and here he is doing it again. That was my initial impression, laying there on my pillow. Because he had gotten up to go play with his toys. The ones he had at my house. And he comes running and yells, Bubby, come look, come see. Come see. Is what he calls me, is Bubby, right? So I'm like, okay. Slip on my slippers and shuffle out there. And it's turning on and off by itself without the switch. And I'm like, what? And then I go over and I see blue electricity arcing across the power panel. Now she had a couple of different fuses and switches for different sections of the house, but the entire kitchen and living room and the washer and dryer were on one switch, so we couldn't run the washer or the dryer at the same time we microwave food, kind of a thing. It would kick the fuse off. Well, here it is, everybody's sleeping, and it starts arcing and sputtering, and that's like an electrical problem. And I'm like, with this being a problem we weren't aware of, and the gas furnace having issues, what if those two had kind of bumped into each other? We'd have been a crater in the ground. I was like, that's it. I'm not saying anything more to this lady. I paid my rent for the month. It's approximately 30 days. And we just put everything in the garage and we moved across town to stay with my daughter. We just took a couple duffel bags of stuff and just shut up there and said, look, I'm getting another place, but that place has got some safety issues. And it suddenly dawns on me while I'm sitting there on my daughter's couch trying to calm my nerves that the ghost that was there, oh yes, this was the second haunting. The ghost that was there had been trying to warn us because he would come and mumble something at me, and then he would glide over towards the door over the stairs at the back of the kitchen, right? And I just was mad because I felt like he was pestering me. I didn't realize that he was trying to warn us that it was dangerous. And this particular ghost had on a loincloth kind of thing, almost like a kilt, but no shirt. He looked very native. He looked island, right? But the fabric, he had fabric. So I'm thinking, Thailand, Philippines? How? Native Americans would wear leather. After Europeans came, they wore cotton. Not every tribe. There are some tribes that actually had cotton clothing before the Europeans got here. But in this area, it seems like I remember learning in school that they wore mostly, rawhide and suede and, some kind of animal skin product. And they would, beautiful beadwork and feathers and, yeah, Okay, because I'm part native, I really like that stuff. And I really get into it, but I haven't done it for a long time because, I'm trying to survive and earn a living, and I don't have a tribal number when I should. There's just, you don't think about the fun stuff as much, and you forget a lot of stuff. So that's why I can't remember. But anyway, he had he looked like mummies look when they took the bandages off, like all shriveled up against the bone, but there's still a lot of flesh there, which is weird. It sounds like preservation, like embalming. And I'm like, I just don't know enough about that. I don't think they do that here. Don't they? Didn't the Ute and the Paiute put them on a platform thing, and so that their soul could get to heaven easier, sort of a deal? I know several tribes, they would feel like they were about to die, and they would leave the tribe and go off up in the hills. And, like the burial grounds, a lot of them, people took themselves there before they died, when they got old and stuff. And then the family would come to the area and take care of the remains, mostly just mark the tree they were leaning up against or whatever. I can't remember exactly. Like I said, it's been a long time, and U.S. history does not include everything. You have to go searching and finding, right? And a lot of the stuff in the libraries is not full information, and until you get to talk to one of the tribal elders, you don't really learn all the real stuff. You learn what is available. But I did do a lot of that. I did read a lot about it and look at photographs, and I just couldn't remember. But it didn't seem like he would have fabric that looked kind of like my grandmother's golden rod colored polyester drapes with the tassels. I mean, it wasn't the same as that, but it was that sort of fabric it looked like. And he was transparent, and he could see his teeth through his lips, like they were shriveled up, which is really weird because I don't remember a corpse ever looking like that. It was bizarre. And he glided up to me and mumbled something in a deep guttural tone that was in a language I wasn't familiar with. I dabble in languages too, and I'm usually able to identify what language, even if I don't have much vocabulary on it, because of the phonetics, right? So I'm like, I don't know what language that is. So I'm doing research and can't find anything. And then I'm watching TAPS, the Atlantic Paranormal Society. I used to love those guys because they were logical. They didn't do a lot of play acting. They were just there to do science, to read what was there. They didn't make anything up. I really liked those guys. I wish they were still in business or being sponsored or filmed for television or whatever, or at least on YouTube. But I was watching all their series on Netflix, and this episode comes, I forget which other paranormal group they partnered with to go to Papua New Guinea or Guam? Anyway, one of those islands on the Ring of Fire where they have the Tautaumono, right? And they showed a picture of it, and I was like, oh, that's what it looks like. What would a Tautaumono be doing in the Rocky Mountains? Like, something's weird. Like, did it haunt an artifact that got brought here? Like, what's going on? But anyway, I got mad at it and I made it leave. Because it was pinching us and stuff, especially in the stairwell. And that's one of the things they do is they pinch you. Usually right around the small of your back, near your kidneys, right? Just pinching your skin, and it's like, ow, stop. So I had an encounter where it was like my youngest was like telling me, yeah, just constantly getting harassed by this thing, and I saw it, and it kind of looked like a mummy. And my 2-year-old grandson had been standing at the bottom of the stairs one day, in the daytime, of course, the lights were on and everything, and looked back at his uncle and said, "Ah, a mummy." I'm gonna